Hello, today I'm going to be talking about Cartesian dualism. Actually, to motivate that, before I do jump in directly into Cartesian dualism, I'm going to start where we left off with objections to identity theory continued. So recall that materialism is a thesis which entails that all persons are purely physical objects. And identity theory is a version of materialism that claims that any mental properties are identical to some physical property. Now, a consequence of IT is that everyone who feels pain has the same sorts of, for example, neural firings, which seems like the plausible sort of physical property that it's underwriting pain. So that, if you think about it for a moment, is quite a strong position to maintain about the relationship between the mental and the physical, and it leads to some other objections, like this one. Suppose Alice is a normal human being. Hal is an artificial intelligence system, and Spacey is an alien from outer space. Now, suppose they are each physically very different. For instance, Alice is carbon-based, Hal is made of some sorts of metal, and Spacey is, say, silicon. But regardless of these differences, suppose they each believe that Obama won the 2012, that should say 2012 US election. Alice believes this because she read it in the newspaper, as does Hal. Spacey believes this because it observed the election from its flying saucer. Now, Alice, Hal, and Spacey all believe this fact, right? Obama won the 2012 election. Now, if that's true, then there's no physical property shared by all and only the things that believe Obama won the 2012 election. And so, there's no physical property shared by all and only the things that believe the 2012 election. Now, if IT is true, then some physical property is shared by all and only the things that believe Obama won the 2012 election. But that is false. So IT must not be true. Now, if IT is true, every mental property is identical with some physical property, which implies there is a physical property Alice, Hal, and Spacey share. What do you think? Is this a sound argument? I'm going to let you reflect on this because we're doing skill practice next week. But perhaps it is strong. Perhaps it is a good objection. Perhaps there's a version of materialism that can avoid it. Let's check this one out. It's called supervenience materialism. It says every person is identical with a purely physical object. Again, that's just materialism. Every person has both mental and physical properties. So far, nothing new. But importantly, the mental properties of an object are completely determined, that is, supervene on its physical properties. What does this mean? That's an For x to supervene on y means roughly that any change in y requires a change in x. That is, any change in a physical property would require a change in a mental property. Not necessarily the other way around. Here's some examples. Baldness. Any two people who are exactly alike in the number of hairs they have and the ways in which those hairs are distributed are exactly alike with respect to whether they are bald. Similarly, mental supervenience. If two people are exactly alike with respect to their physical properties, then they are exactly alike with respect to their mental properties. That is to say, mental properties supervene on their physical properties. So supervenience materialism is consistent with saying Alice, Hal, and Spacey all believe that Obama won the 2012 election without requiring they share some physical properties. They could have different physical properties and all end up believing the same thing because the mental properties can be had with different physical bases. Believing Obama won the election supervenes on the physical properties of Alice, but also on the physical properties of Hal and Spacey. This does not have to imply that those physical properties are the same. Because of this flexibility, the supervenience materialism theory avoids the objection from physically different thinkers, but runs into another concern, which we'll think about now. By reflecting on Mary and what she did or didn't know, suppose that we know everything there is to know about physical facts concerning color, like the physics of light, physiology of color vision, everything. Now, suppose Mary's an expert scientist who knows all of this information, but Mary has had an unusual upbringing. She's been raised in a black and white room her entire life. Indeed, her own skin has been painted a shade of gray. She's never seen anything other than shades of white and black. Still, she has studied color intensely despite never having had an experience of it. Now, suppose she's one day released from the black and white room and sees a red apple for the first time. Did Mary learn something? Look, if supervenience materialism is true, then every fact about red sensations is a physical one. And if every fact about red sensations is physical, then Mary knew every fact about red before seeing the tomato. It follows that if supervenience materialism is true, then Mary knew every fact about red before seeing the tomato. Now Mary learned a fact about red sensations when seeing the tomato. Apologies for the typos there. But if that is true, then Mary didn't know every fact about red before seeing the tomato. Hence, Mary didn't know every fact about red before seeing the tomato. Hence, supervenience materialism is not true. Is this sound? What do you think? Again, discuss this during skill practice. Remember, this argument, what Mary didn't know, this argument is attacking supervenience materialism. Okay, so I'm going to assume for the sake of argument that these objections have some weight to them. And so materialism, whether it's identity theory or supervenience materialism, have some concerns that it's not clear we can address. So it might be worth considering other theories of mind to see if they fare any better. Which leads us directly into Cartesian dualism. Cartesian because it was invented, it was popularized and disseminated by Descartes. Cartesian dualism consists of these theses. Each person is a mixed substance composed of two substance parts, an immaterial mind and a physical body. Each mind is essentially thoughtful and unextended in space. Each body is essentially extended in space and thoughtless. Minds and bodies may exist independently from one another, and they enter into two-way causal interactions. Now, I've got some jargon here. Let's unpack. Except as a substance, if and only if it's an individual thing that has properties, but is not a property of anything else, and it's able to exist independently. You and I, for instance, are substances. We are things that bear properties, but we are not properties of anything else. Redness, remember, is a property. It's a property of stuff like apples, but apples are not properties, right? They are more substancy than that. Check this out, another piece of jargon. X's property F essentially, if and only if X has F, and it's impossible for X to exist and not have F. So what this means here is that if something's going to count as a mind, then it has to be something that thinks and cannot be extended in space at all. On the other hand, bodies do not think at all, and they are extended in space. That is what it means to be essential in that sense. If a body is not extended in space, then it's not a body, according to this. Now, Cartesian dualism provides an explanation for those who believe souls exist and are able to leave the body, such like astral projection, reincarnation, etc. Now, you might not be thinking this is good motivation for adopting Cartesian dualism, but look, you might also be agnostic about this phenomena, these phenomena. You might not know, you might not feel like you have enough evidence to determine really whether there are such things as astral projections or reincarnation. And so if you are constructing a theory of mind, then it might be wise to construct a theory that is also agnostic about whether these things are true or whether these things happen. Cartesian dualism can give you that sort of flexibility. Materialism, on the other hand, would rule them out as not ever occurring. They just can't happen. So think about that. Like, you might not think those things are true, but you also might not know that you know. And so you ought to come up with a theory that can accommodate that agnosticism insofar as you have it. On the other hand, Cartesian dualism provides an explanation for things like survival after death. Again, you may not think this is true, but you also might be agnostic about it. If you are, you might be inclined then, or perhaps you should be inclined to have a theory of mind that allows for such things. Now, Cartesian dualism is, importantly, also consistent with the existence of physically different thinkers such as Alice, Hal, and Spacey. And it should go without saying, but it is also consistent with Mary learning something. Now, objections. Problem of other minds. Now, if Cartesian dualism is true, then it's possible for there to be a human that doesn't think but behaves just like one who does. But if it's possible for such a thing to happen, then no human knows whether other humans think. Hence, if Cartesian dualism is true, no human knows whether other humans think. But it's not the case that no human knows whether other humans think. Hence, Cartesian dualism is not true. Look, put this another way. If Cartesian dualism is true, a normal human being might simply have no mind. Since the body is what caused humans to act the way they do, this human could act like anybody else, like a robot, like robotically, in that it's unthinking, but nevertheless it can behave just like any other human. There's nothing stopping that from being possible. Like, moreover, you wouldn't be able to tell that this normally behaving human didn't have a mind, since no MRI or X-ray or anything like that would be able to detect the immaterial mind. Remember, it's not extended in space. So it looks like if CD is true, then we can't know other people have minds. We can't be sure. Is this argument sound? What do you think? Now, Descartes took issue, or would take issue, with this first line. He thinks that just because Cartesian dualism is true doesn't mean it's possible for there to be a human that doesn't think, behaves like one who does. He actually thinks that's impossible. You can't, according to him, behave the way humans do, but not think. What do you think about that? Is that compelling? Let's look at this other argument. This is also from the reading now. Causal interaction between purely physical objects and purely non-physical minds is inconceivable. If one, then causal interactions between purely physical objects and purely non-physical minds do not occur. Hence, those things do not occur. But if that's true, then CD is false. Hence, CD is false. Is this argument sound? You might take issue with this. Now, this incidentally is from the reading on Princess Elizabeth, when she was objecting to Descartes. She made this sort of move. The assumption that something that is inconceivable is therefore impossible, but that is not true. There are lots of things that are inconceivable. It doesn't mean they're impossible. You just don't think you can conceive of them. Folks used to think it was inconceivable that we could land on the moon. But now we have very wealthy billionaires trying to do it, because it's something that's clearly possible. How about this? This is sort of a refinement of that same argument, but one that I think has more teeth. If Cartesian dualism is true, then physical events and brains have non-physical causes. But if that's true, then physical events and brains violate the laws of physics. So, if Cartesian dualism is true, then physical events and brains violate the laws of physics. But it's not the case that physical events and brains violate the laws of physics. Hence, Cartesian dualism is not true. Look, if Cartesian dualism is true, minds and brains causally interact. But physical laws describe physical causes of events. If physical events have non-physical causes, they exist outside physical descriptions of the laws of nature. This is just to say, ultimately, that if Cartesian dualism is true, and this is the theory of mind you want to run with, then you're kind of betting against science, because you're betting that science can't really explain what goes on in the mind. So, a moment ago, remember, I was saying, hey, maybe if you want to be agnostic about the possibility of astral projection or reincarnation, you should have a theory that can accommodate that. Well, that is true, but should you have a theory that accommodates it to the extent that it actually bets against science? I was suggesting remaining agnostic in your theory and neutral in your theory to the extent possible, not betting against our best descriptions of the world. So that seems a compelling objection to Cartesian dualism. What do you think? Are you compelled? Let me summarize here and we'll close out. Look, identity theory can't handle physically different thinkers, but supervenience materialism is a version of materialism that can. But it may be susceptible to the what Mary didn't know objection, which seems it is potentially powerful. Now, Cartesian dualism maintains we're two substances, both mind and body, and in doing so it avoids the objections that were troubling various versions of materialism. Nevertheless, there are worries about how these substances interact, what that entails regarding our knowledge of science and of other minds.